Hello and welcome to the Stacking Dingers Show, your home for all things Underdog MLB Best Ball. I'm your host, Matthew, aka Sheep, aka Dark Sheep. We are in Outfielder Week, not in Infielder Week. We are in Outfielder Week this week. Be sure to go check out last week if you missed the infield preview where we talked about almost every relevant underdog infielder. And this week, we're going to hopefully do that for outfielders. No, not hopefully. We will do that for outfielders. We've got Billy. Billy's here as usual. Welcome, Billy. And making his Stacking Dingers debut, a man who I just met a month ago online or so, Spencer. What's up, Spencer?
How's it going, guys? Very happy to be here joining the show tonight. Pumped to talk some outfielders with you.
Yeah. So for people that maybe didn't catch your sheep seats stream, or you made a wonderful appearance on Benched with Bubba. Maybe if they haven't checked those out, who is Spencer?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So my name's Spencer, and I'm just a big fantasy baseball player who is kind of obsessed with this stuff, and I love best ball and love talking about best ball, and just decided this year I wanted to reach out and start talking to some people instead of just blabbering my friends' ears off all the time. So here we are. I'm very happy to be talking to you guys.
Excellent.
That's
Yeah.
exactly how I got into this space too. Because I started playing Underdog, and my friends are like, "Cool, dude." They didn't really understand. I'm like, "This is really cool," and so I had to find a community to chat about this with, and that's how I ended up here as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Same.
great.
Same for me. 3 years ago, I just started doing these streams because people were doing football stuff, and there was nothing talking about baseball, and I was, you know, as is known, we love baseball here at Stack Dingers, so that was much more of a priority for me, and yeah, just started streaming to nobody, and here we are. All right. Speaking of here we are, let's pull up the wonderful graphic that Billy has made again this week. This week, we are, as I said, we are talking about outfielders. This first slide is kind of interesting. I don't know that we talked about it too much last week, but this is the round. How many of that position are being taken in that round? And then on the right, cumulative. So as you get this week, I think I can't remember, Billy. How many did we talk about in the first? How many players did we get through in the first infielder episode?
I'm not sure exactly, but I think the big takeaway here is just how front loaded the player pool is for the outfield. Like it gets a lot of the big names get drafted early and they're pushed up the board big time. And then those middle rounds, it just no one's drafting outfielders. So it is just kind of a warped player pool.
Yeah, all these red rounds are. I'm sure the pitcher is dark blue in those rounds.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
no doubt.
we're gonna try to get through, a good clip of them tonight, and then we'll be hitting the back half in a future episode this week. So yeah, let's get into it. Slide number one. No surprise here. Let's actually, for those who haven't watched this, the infielder yet, maybe starting at the outfielder. This is data as of today that Billy has pulled. This is using the Bat X projections available on Fangraphs, and we have the player, the team, the current ADP when you pulled this, the rank within the position, which so that's what outfield number they are, and then the round they're being taken in. And then when it comes to stats, we did change it up just a little bit, but we have the total amount of underdog points if you convert their projection to underdog scoring for the entire season. I said it last week, or I'll say it again. That does not, that is a longer period than our contest period. When you're looking at the numbers of how much someone scored last year compared to this year in like actual like data from the contest last year, you're going to see some differences. That's why it's just the time period that it's taken over. And then we get down to a rate stat, so underdog points per projected plate appearance. So that kind of starts to weed out players that might have lower point projection or plate appearance projections, but have good scoring per plate appearance. And then projected plate appearance. So if you're looking at these numbers, this is the thing that is always talked about within projection systems that is potentially the most variable and hardest to predict. So a lot of times, especially as we get later in the outfield position, we'll be talking about, maybe some guys that have more opportunity, more playing time potential, or even the other way, if certain guys have bad platoon splits, we'll talk about the plate appearances are low for that sort of reason. And then just to give you a general idea of, their hitting projection, we have the WOBA, and then we have two category specifics here. Again, in Underdog, we don't really care about categories like rotisserie, fantasy baseball, but it is interesting to look at two specific things: home runs and stolen bases. In this case, to try and, home run gives us an idea of potential spike weeks, because home runs are just so valuable on Underdog in the scoring. And then we have the stolen base there. The stolen base is not like a super high value target, but in terms of Underdog scoring, but this kind of comparison with the home run and the stolen base next to each other kind of gives you an idea of who the player is offensively. So, last week we had Bobby Witt at the top of the infield, and he's blue in both air, or I guess your scaling is differently here on the map.
Yeah, so I guess like the what we're trying, I guess what you're ultimately trying to summarize is a total points or points per plate appearance doesn't perfectly translate to best ball scoring because we know that the bad weeks are thrown away and you want to prioritize the good weeks, but we also do care about some level of floor. You're going to see that, like, so WOBAs, how much damage are they doing? Home run rates, ability to get to spiky kind of behavior, stolen bases. It's actually kind of the colors are inverted. So the red is going to be higher numbers there, and that's because you're going to see players with higher stolen base projections. That means their floor is going to be raised by that stolen base number. But it also might mean that some of the ceiling could be lower, but it depending on what else they're doing as well. So it kind of just helping give context to the totals and per plate appearance metrics that we think gets lost because best ball is pretty nuanced.
Yeah. Thank you for helping me summarize there. You knew where I was going, just I couldn't quite get there.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start with the guest first. Shohei Ohtani, Spencer. Is he number one? How much do we downgrade him for the potential of pitching and missed at bats? I mean, you look at here, he's got more at plate appearances projected than Aaron Judge. I guess what are your thoughts on the pitching situation? I mean, we know who Shohei is already, but now we kind of have this new element this year compared to last year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, first off, isn't it kind of strange having Shohei Ohtani as an outfielder number one? That's something that is a nuance to Underdog is that all designated hitters go into outfield. So a lot of these guys will be talking out here on this first and second slide are going to be designated. Actually, the second slide after this is going to be DHs. Shohei, here's my rule in best ball. If Shohei's name is available and there, you click it, because Shohei is the best player that we've ever seen, and I don't ever want to doubt Shohei Ohtani, because I mean, yes, everything that people are afraid of with the, like you said, plate appearances going down because of pitching more after the first month or so, steals going down. I get all of that. It's fair arguments. I do think that you could make a very good argument for Aaron Judge. I mean, Aaron Judge is an absolute beast. We've seen this year after year. Talk about how much home runs drive your points. Well, we know Aaron Judge can hit a lot of home runs, but Shohei Ohtani, on top of course, also being able to hit a lot of home runs and steal bases, is just an amazing hitter. I mean, just last year, he last 2 seasons he's led the league in OPS. So OPS, obviously, that's going to incorporate a lot of those slugging numbers, which go up with doubles, which go up with the occasional triples because Shohei's so fast. Well, doubles and triples are worth a good amount of points in underdog as well. I mean, triples is just beneath the home run. Obviously, you're not going to see near as many triples, but Shohei can still get a few. So anyway, Shohei is just a beast. Runs too. Talk about the points you get from runs. The Dodgers are going to be maybe the best offense that we've ever seen. If not, they're going to be close to it most likely. And Shohei could get 140, 150 in runs. His career high was last year with 134 on his first year with the Dodgers. Well, that could be eclipsed again this year, and he could have a new career high. I could see 140 being easily achievable. So, for me personally, that's it. It's just if Shohei's there, you don't doubt him. You just click his name.
Well said. Billy, Aaron Judge, easy number 2 for most people. I've seen you take him number 1, so talk about that.
So I think when going through my ranks, I do think that he belongs as the number one ranked player, just from how his profile fits underdog scoring, how many home runs he hits, and just what the production. But so I've clicked him at 1 on principle of the rankings, but as Spencer said, like it's kind of almost irresponsible to not take my fair share of Shohei too if that pops up. So I'm doing that and drafting them with a little bit more Judge, but like having my fair get to try to be balanced on Shohei as well. But yeah, so Aaron Judge, just consistent producer, ton of home runs, ton of power, unbelievable ballpark to hit as well. And he does this with not the highest plate appearance projection. So theoretical world where he does stay healthy the whole time. There's maybe even more numbers in here, but he's just a superstar, and he has kind of the same rule as Shohei. He's there, just click it.
Yeah, and I think at certain points in Judge's career, we've been worried about his body size holding up to baseball, but I think he's proven the last few years that he's figured out how to take care of himself much more than maybe some of those earlier years, and that kind of argument has gone away after like 2 really consistent years. But his former teammate for a small amount of time, Juan Soto, is now a New York Met. Spencer, I mean, we basically have the whole Mets lineup back this year, and now you add Soto to it. I guess, do you think that is a positive lineup change, or kind of even for him? And then, what kind of things can he do now that he's settled into this long-term contract?
Yes. Well, first, I did want to throw one thing in there and say, because Billy kind of made me think of this when he was answering. I think a lot of times, whenever you're debating these players at the top, and you can put Soto absolutely into the same bucket as Judge and Otani, he does deserve to be here, in my opinion. Um, if you are, I think a lot of times it's based off how often you're drafting. So, Billy, I don't know how often you're drafting, but I can see if you're limiting your shares to maybe making those decisions like Judge over Otani. But for me, like I said, I will take Otani one, I will take Judge two, and I will take Soto three based off if I have those picks because I do truly believe that they're the three best. So I just wanted to mention that real quick before I go into Soto here. Um, because as we get to later, obviously there's going to be a lot of more room for nuance of moving people around. But up here at the top, I do want to say when people sign giant long-term deals, me personally, I generally like to sit out the first year of that because normally the first year of a monster new deal is usually kind of a not so great year. I mean, even just look at Soto's new teammate Lindor as a great example of that happening a few years ago. Lindor was really bad for a while, and then he ended up turning things back around. Trey Turner was just really bad in his first year in a monster deal with the Phillies. So, for his standards, obviously. So I am slightly worried about that because this is the biggest contract we've ever seen. I mean, 15 years, 765 million. Isn't that even crazy to just say out loud?
Like
I
it
mean,
has no meaning to me when you say it. It's like, yeah, that's a
no,
number. I
That's
don't
not
know.
real.
exactly. I mean, it's just insane. Um, but from a production standpoint, Soto, he does everything. On Underdog, you get points for walks. If people don't know this, you get points for hit by pitches. Basically, you get points for getting on base, and Juan Soto is a beast at doing that very thing. So Juan Soto, essentially, if you want a stud at the top, you take him. And I do miss the times from the way too early when you could swing around and pair Lindor with him in round two, because that pretty much never happens anymore. But that was pretty fun for a while. Um, but I did want to mention this last thing about Soto. So last season on the Yankees, which that just reminded me, you made a comment about him switching lineups. So I do think that Soto does make lineups around him better just by him being in it. So Lindor, Alonso, I mean, Alonso re-signing there, I actually really like Alonso a lot because of Soto. I almost like Alonso now because Alonso, sorry to bridge off on him, but because Soto's going to give him so much more protection and he'll see better pitches just being around Juan Soto. Same with everyone, just him being in the lineup. But last season, I track things in my way. This is not based off of Underdog, but it's based off NFBC best ball points. But if they have a high impact week, which is they factored for 30 or more, which is a lot. Now, not as much in Underdog as it is in best ball 10s or NFBC, but last year he had 68% of the time he had an impact week. So not just a factoring week with like a good solid week, but I mean like a really good week where he made a lot of impact almost 70% of the time. So you can just see how much of a difference maker that is from not only a ceiling perspective, but a consistency perspective throughout the year, because he can help get your team there and win it for you.
Yeah. So, we are in the outfielders, but I think there's an interesting question here. Um, and when we bring Bobby Witt Jr. into the conversation, um, I think I did it a few days ago. I took Bobby Witt over Soto. So I think it's an interesting conversation to have as we're here. Um, how does I'll keep with you, Spencer. How does Bobby Witt compare to Juan Soto uh, in the in a vacuum as underdog scorers, and then how, if you think about these guys in terms of like who you're going to pair them with. So if you're thinking about taking Soto, you might be targeting like one of the high value infielders in the late second round. And if you're taking Bobby Witt, you're thinking about the outfielders that are available there. Like how do you compare those two starts in addition to those two hitters just in a vacuum?
Bobby Witt is obviously an absolute beast as well. And if we are talking about any other format other than Underdog, I would 100% be taking Bobby Witt over Soto, and I'm sure Judge in most formats, because I'm going to want the speed that Bobby Witt gives with everything else. Bobby does it all. And we're looking at probably the biggest superstar emerging right in front of our faces over the last 2 years is Bobby Witt Jr. So I completely get it. I think it's a valid argument. And from a stacking perspective, you can go with a pretty good Kansas City stack because guys go late with that stack, right? Vinny P, you can get a late Salvador Perez. There's not many outfielder options that you could want to add to that stack, though. I mean, MJ Melendez in your last round. There's not a whole lot from the Royals from a outfield stacking perspective. Some good infielders, Jonathan India, he pops into my mind too, real quick. Pitchers, Seth Lugo, they all go later. The Mets are a much more desirable stack to me. The Mets, I think, are that team that could theoretically challenge the Dodgers for one of the best teams in baseball. I mean, the Braves too. There's going to be a few really good teams, but the Mets could be right there at the very top. So for me, I will take the Mets and I will stack Mets pieces with Mark Vientos and Pete Alonso and um, whatever Brandon Nimmo, whoever I end up adding in those rounds a little bit later on. So I would prefer Soto from both a positional standpoint and a stack standpoint here on Underdog. Whereas again, Bobby Witt everywhere else, but we're talking about Underdog.
Yep.
I think it is an interesting discussion though, because
It is.
if you look at these projected totals and per plate appearance, you have a tier one, and I think it's Otani Judge. I don't think Soto is in that. I think he's 1B. But Bobby Witt is tier one infield. And I don't think that the other first round infielders are tier one in this, and they may be more like Ellie and Gunnar or 1B. So I'm interested that it is interesting that there isn't more discussion about Bobby Witt at 3. So the 3 tier one premium players at their position, true separators, and because Juan Soto does more. He's definitely boosted by a little bit of volume here, compared to some of the other guys that you could get a little bit later. Or it's interesting that Kyle Tucker, we'll talk about next, is right there from a per plate appearance perspective.
Yeah. So, uh, you're looking at. I just pulled up a draft board. So, if you take Juan Soto, right, and you're looking to do, you want one of each, a high value outfielder, high value infielder. You're looking at putting Freddie Freeman, Matt Olson, Bryce Harper, Raffy Devers, like one of those guys with him, right? Maybe I don't know,
Yep.
Vlad doesn't really fall there. Frank Lindor doesn't fall there. But then if you're taking Bobby Witt Jr., you're almost banking on one of these really young guys to hit at a higher rate than we expect. So, one, you could maybe get Ronald, or you could probably get Ronald Acuna there most drafts if you want to take, that risk. But then there's like Jackson Merrill, Wyatt Langford, James Wood, Brent Rooker, a couple of solid guys. If like Ozuna or Teoscar, you could put there with them maybe. But yeah, that's kind of the 1 versus 1 or 2 versus 2 comparison. That if you want the infielder in the first round, where you're at outfield. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there as it. But I think that's a great point, Spencer, as far as the team stacking partners. Juan Soto is a lot more desirable if you're looking for a big stack with your first guy.
Yep. And this is stacking dingers. So you guys like stacks. So
We love it. All right. Let's see. Okay. You kind of started talking about him there, Billy, as the next step down. Kyle Tucker going from Houston to Chicago. Pretty much the talk on him is that going to Chicago might be a detriment to some of his power potential, but Kyle Tucker is he your first, whatever tier 2 outfielder, Billy?
He is, and he was on a heater last year. 23 home runs in 340 plate appearances. So just if you project that across the whole season, that's pretty monster numbers. Um, but so I think that like I look at the baseball savant and one of my favorite things is expected home runs by park and seeing how like that would have impacted him, and he does go from 23 to 19, so I mean it definitely is not as great a place to hit for him, it seems like. But that being said, he was also on this major ascent too, so I think he belongs right there. Yeah, that's just kind of my take on that.
Yeah, and Kyle Tucker, I just want to add this. Through the first 9 weeks of the season last year, so that's exactly 1/3 out of 27 weeks, he was outfield number one. So through the first third, before his shin contusion, outfield one. So that is a interesting point just to note there as well.
Yeah, and I don't think we know. I mean, maybe you don't know, but the story with the shin contusion being out forever because of it, it's not an injury that we really need to worry about going forward. Being something that I don't think whatever it ended up being, just a fracture in his shin. I don't think this year maybe that is
He
something to worry
better
about.
start wearing a shin guard for crying out loud. I mean, I was watching when that happened and he fouled it right off of his leg. And it's like, my gosh, dude, I don't know why anyone doesn't wear all the protection that they can all the time. I'd have it on my hands, my elbows, my legs, my feet, all of that. Anyway.
It's like self-inflicted pain, but you also don't want to be that player with every single piece of gear to where you look like a robot.
Hey, I'd do it. If it was me, I would do it.
Yeah, I don't know that any of us are really here to talk about what a baseball player should actually be doing, but
Baseball gear.
Right.
all right. So talking about injuries with Kyle Tucker, moving on to Corbin Carroll, ADP 7, still in or now in the middle of the first round. Spencer, we last year we saw just kind of a change throughout the season. Uh, you know, shoulder issues in his past, um, kind of kind of a speed over power guy when we look at these uh, sort of numbers on the right. But still, speed kind of gives him those doubles that we talk about also being valuable. So, Spencer, Corbin Carroll here, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned it. Everyone talked about his shoulder last year, right? Like that was all the talk. Corbin Carroll's shoulder, and it was deserved. So I was just mentioning how through the first 9 weeks, Kyle Tucker was outfield one. I want either of you to guess through 9 weeks, where did Corbin Carroll rank at outfield? Take a guess.
I'm just going to say number 55.
Okay, 55, Billy.
46.
102. Outfield 102 through the first 9 weeks. Now he finished the season as outfield eight. So big increase throughout the year. The middle half, it started. Middle half he got to outfield 42 at the end of 18 weeks and then got to outfield eight by the end of the year. So Corbin Carroll is a beast. Everyone knows this. He's one of the fastest guys out there. His sprint speed on Baseball Savant is 96th percentile or 98th percentile. I mean, he's up there at the top. I can't tell if that's a 96 or a 98, but he's fast. So, and Corbin Carroll signed for the long term. The Diamondbacks are a good team. They're a fun team to stack. I like taking Corbin Carroll because I really like stacking him with Ketel Marte, Eugenio Suarez, and some of those other like really good Diamondback pieces. So I do very much like taking Corbin Carroll. However, he's definitely still risky. You're not taking Corbin Carroll and knowing, oh, I've got. It's not like Juan Soto. It's not even like Kyle Tucker. There is much more room for error in the Corbin Carroll profile. But that speed, like Billy's sheet shows, it raises his floor so much that he's worth it. So I think that Corbin Carroll should be owned, but like for me, he's a 10% of the time guy. So like It'll just kind of be like when he falls to me, I don't specifically go out looking for him in underdog, but I'm not afraid to take him. So
Yeah. So we go from Carroll's shoulder. Say that one, Corbin Carroll's shoulder. You can add that one to the tongue twisters we come up with on the show. To Jordan Alvarez's knees. So he, we see here in the projected plate appearances, the only whitish number on this board. Billy Jordan Alvarez, absolute beast, one of the best pure hitters out there, but is known to have some, the knees of a 80-year-old.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to start this off with saying we miss you, Chris. This should be your player right now. I'll do my best. So yes, it is. He also the playing time historically has not been like full volume like we've seen like with the rest of this list. Even Acuna lower, that's a different reason. Everyone here has the projection is 640 plus for the most part. And but he's got this number of 590, and that's because of bad knees. And he also had this like interesting bit of news that came out that I don't want to like recently that I was like, what is that? But from like a positive perspective, he absolutely mashes the ball, does everything you want to do, and the fact that like what he doesn't do is he doesn't run because of those knees, and that doesn't really hurt him here because of all of his how much he impacts the baseball with home runs and doubles and so on. So just an absolute superstar, someone I'm targeting pretty heavily just because he projects from a total perspective with the rest of the people in we'll call tier two first rounders on a much lower volume. So if he can get that, which is just staying healthy, then we're looking at an absolute smash.
Yeah,
yep.
one of my favorite things to do, I have done this multiple times, is you take Jordan Alvarez, and then you go to YouTube as you're doing the rest of the draft, and you look up just the home run highlight reels, and just listening to those home run smashes, and the calls, and it'll get you amped up for sure.
And he has such a beautiful swing. It is like so simple, and it just
Yeah. And his baseball savant pages over the last 3 years are red bars maxed out to the top at every single category. X-WOBA, XBA, X-slugging, average exit velocity, barrel percentage, hard hit percentage, sweet spot percentage, everything right at the top. He is just cream of the crop. But like you said, he doesn't steal. There's a little bit of a risk to him, but great hitter. Well worth taking.
And he, with that risk, you kind of get in rooms, him and the next guy, where they will fall
Yes.
past this ADP 8 and 9, 10 kind of range.
Mm-hmm.
You can get into some rooms where they fall to 11 or 12, and I think that's makes for some fun builds. If you kind of try to build them a little bit differently than if you get them at their ADP. So yeah, next guy, Fernando Tatis Jr., ADP of 10. Spencer, I guess at this point, post goofball antics and PED suspension, who is Fernando Tatis Jr.?
Oh gosh, that is a great question. One that we are all asking. So let me say, Fernando Tatis Jr. is a stud. I will say that. So Fernando Tatis is one of the most premium outfield, well, really one of the most premium bats we have in baseball. Here's my case for taking him right here. Why he's worth it, even with the risk. It's because if Fernando Tatis clicks, stays healthy and the Padres don't implode, Fernando Tatis can be the number one overall player. He's that level. He's that good. I mean, we're looking at a guy that he also maxes out the red on StatCast. Every week he produces. He does steal, so he does add the speed, but he's got big power. He does everything that you want from a ball player. It's just a matter of what's up here. And what's up here, is that going to affect what happens on the field? Like I can't get out of my mind from back a couple years ago whenever Manny Machado like grabbed him in the dugout and was like, "You're the star, man. Look, everyone is here for you. Like, get it together." Because, now granted, he's several years older than that now. He was a really young kid. A lot of times it's easy to forget how young these guys are. Fernando Tatis is just going to be 26 years old right now. This season is his age 26 season. So we used to not even consider guys entering their prime until 27. Now that narrative has kind of changed over the years, I know, but I still like to think of that 27 number in my head for like when guys are going to hit their peak. And Fernando's not there yet. So we can have the best Tatis season to come. I think that's enough of a case to throw him in at least 10% of your drafts. I mean, he's worth owning.
Yeah, I think it is a non-0% chance that the Padres just implode this season, but how much do we know about that situation? And we just have like 1% of the information even there to even try to make those decisions.
And Manny is still there, so come on, Manny, keep them together, lead them.
Yeah, that's not a player that a lot of people would think you're looking for that leadership, but I think
He's grown into that
he's
there
grown.
with
Yeah,
the Padres.
yeah. All right, Kyle Schwarber, Billy, not a guy that is going to be, we talk about the DH guys. So in Roto, nobody wants Kyle Schwarber because, he only produces home runs and he clogs up your utility spot. But, Billy, why do we want Kyle Schwarber?
Oh, this is just the perfect format for him because he's a DH slash outfielder, and so
Mhm.
therefore we get to draft him at the most scarce position. And so who is Kyle Schwarber? Is someone who fits our format really well, hits for power, and has racked up a ton of plate appearances. His flaws of striking out and really low batting averages are completely wiped out for us. And so, just a player who year after year has just produced. I do think it is interesting that one of his biggest assets is his plate appearance volume. And there is some talk recently that he might bat third rather than first, which wouldn't be a small change for him. So if he goes and loses 30 or 40 plate appearances, that could be somewhat material. So to the projection. So someone who in just structurally and what he does on from a production perspective, I really like to draft, but not as like excited as I was a week and a half ago.
I hadn't heard that. That's very interesting that he might go to third. That does actually hurt him quite a bit in my mind. Hitting leadoff there is a big part of why I think his production is so good in Underdog. Is that those extra plate appearances? I already personally don't take a ton of Schwarber because, like you were saying, Matthew, Jordan falls down there in a lot of drafts when you have pick 11 or 12. Plus, you got Jose Ramirez and Mookie Betts sitting there in most drafts, and it's hard to click away from those names. So. Um, but I wanted to throw this in. Schwarber's in a contract walk year, so he's going to be a free agent after this year. So just something to keep in mind. There's always that factor, that narrative.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even realize that. All right. Next on our list, a guy who was a staple of the first round last year, Julio is slipping down. Schwarber was going after all of these guys kind of last year, but he's only passed Julio. Spencer, like, we kind of have a pretty bad connotation to the Seattle Mariners offense, and Julio did not quite live up to what we wanted last year. Uh, the I had the Roto, whatever pick where I had to debate Julio and Bobby Witt, and I made the wrong decision. Is it still a wrong decision to think Julio should be going here on Underdog?
This is a good spot where he goes around pick 14, 15 sometimes little 16 or 17, it's a good spot to take the gamble on the bounce back for him. But if he reproduced last year, no, pick won't be worth it because Lindor, Vladimir are right there at this part of the draft, or Paul Skeens if you want him. So that's who you have to take Julio over, is those guys. I do think he's worth it because I do think Julio is a really, really good ball player. He's only going to be 24. Last year, it was the power that really was zapped. He only had 20 homers at the end. He had 4 homers after the first third of the season. I mean, but this is a guy that if anyone watched the home run derby a couple years ago, Julio has plenty of power. It's not a lack of power. I mean, when he hits it, he absolutely crushes the ball. So Julio, he has his hard hit percent is up there at the top. Julio is really, really good, but Seattle's not very desirable, and they are not a very fun team to stack other than their pitchers. I mean, you can have a non-stacked hitters and just stack Seattle pitchers with Julio if you want. But yeah, there's not a lot of great situations in Seattle. Not a lot of great reason for optimism that this year is going to be so much better from a team perspective. Although I fully expect Julio to be back to 30 homers, 30 steals. So I think he's worth it. It's just be mindful of, if you take Julio, you're going to be passing on another stud right there in the middle of the second round. It's just more of an outfield play. Do you want to start? Probably depends on who you took. If you took Ellie in round 1, then maybe you take Julio in round 2.
Yeah, that's a good call. A guy who we did want last year, Billy, Jaron Duran, has gone from, I don't know, the back half, back 3/4. I can't remember where he was going last year, but it wasn't very high. I've on record multiple times saying, is he just a platoon, strong side platoon guy? But he showed up last year and has gotten himself now, Billy, to an ADP of 15.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of came out of nowhere. He was not a great defender, and then he's a great defender. Had not hit the ball really that hard, and now he does. I think it is interesting that in my mind, he is this very young player, but he is 28 years old. So he's definitely in his prime. But yeah, no, someone who got all of the opportunity. They were intentional about batting him first, and 700 played 735 plate appearances is just such good volume, and he produced with it. So, someone who, but from like a this year perspective, I think this is about priced as a ceiling. I think what he does, I don't know how much more is in there, and so someone who I'm just less excited about from what he does, like if you look at his raw total points, he's fine where he's ranked, but when you look at what comprises of that, doesn't really hit a ton of home runs and is going to be stealing a little bit more to inflate some of that volume based production. So not been a target of mine, but someone who was an absolute smash last year and like a prototype or an archetype we should be looking for this year.
Yeah, he's kind of a clear fade to me from this is him drafting him at his peak value. Whereas he would be someone that I would be very interested in if he was going in the Ian Happ, Brandon Nimmo range of, round 3, 4. But I think this is such a high price. I'm at 2%. And that's because I wanted to get a couple Red Sox stacks. So I did it specifically to focus on Red Sox stacks. That's kind of for me, I'm only going to take Duran if I plan on wanting to do a Red Sox team. Because
Yeah.
you
That
have to
is
plan on
interesting.
it.
That is so interesting. Like we have, at some point, the question will be target, stack only, or complete fade. It's very rarely do you hear stack only in the second round. That's not
Eh,
typically how I want to draft, but
no,
I
you're
can
right.
understand it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm going to go a little out of order here and just pull out Ronald Acuna for myself. Coming off of the second major knee injury, different knee. We saw him have a pretty slow start, not a lot of steals after the first one. And I mean, it's simple. We know who Ronald Acuna is. We'd be talking about him with Otani and Judge if we didn't have the knee thing to worry about. So I think just generally, Acuna is your risk tolerance here at ADP 20. If you want to build a lineup that says he makes it to, and he's valuable in the playoffs, you got to take him here. But I'm also going to group these next three guys together and kind of we'll start with you, Spencer. But we have Jackson Churio at ADP 16. We have Jackson Merrill at ADP 21 and Wyatt Langford ADP 24. We have all three of these guys in their sophomore season. You look at projections, especially here in the bat. We start to see the decline in the projection compared to these other guys. So just throwing all three in a basket. First off, Spencer, who's your preference? Are any of these guys similar, or where do you see these three guys as a group?
This is a really fun group of three. Really, really fun. All three of these guys I find extremely desirable in most every format. Here on Underdog, I don't really like taking the round two gambles on these guys. I kind of feel like I've already taken one of the outfielders before, or I'm going to push it to round three with some of the guys we'll talk about on the next slide. But every single one of these guys, all their upside all says that you need to have some shares of them. So Wyatt's the one I have the least amount of, even though Wyatt looking on here, I mean, he looks pretty desirable, but I have the least amount of him. Um, that's what I wanted to say there. All three are great. All three are three of the biggest young second year players we have. It's just I'm not taking a lot of them. I'd rather this high take someone that I feel a little bit better on. Um, but before you move on to Billy, I did want one quick thought I wanted to say because it's something about Acuna. I mean, it's something that Billy had mentioned on another one of your podcasts I was listening to that I thought was a phenomenal idea because I did this last year with different players, and I hadn't even considered doing it with Acuna. But that is betting on Acuna being back healthy, taking him at one, and then going with Ozuna and Olson if you can get them for that trio right there with the swing of the 2-3. So I just wanted to say I thought that was a brilliant strategy and idea that I'm a fan
I
of.
didn't say that.
For the audio only listeners, Billy looked surprised when he said that when somebody told him that he had a great idea. So,
Well, no, I'm pretty sure that was Chris's bit was
Oh.
the Atlanta full stack. I was touting the Texas full stack, which you still have to do a
I
little
thought it was you that said
research.
you had done that with Acuna, but sorry.
yeah, that sounds like
It was a
Chris.
good idea either way. Whoever said it, I guess.
So I take it back, Billy. You gotta get back in the content minds to have a first good idea. So
It was my chart that caused the idea.
there you go.
Hey, that's right. That's right.
I'm actually in a pretty similar position. I am low on Churio, Merrill, and Langford in my exposures. I love all three of those players, and I just don't find myself taking them, Billy. So I'll throw it now to you. Do you have one of the three that stands out more, or than just as the group? What do you think?
Um, so here's my thought on all of them: is Jackson Churio is the most expensive, so I'll least like least like him. Jackson Merrill, we've talked about San Diego several times about how that isn't necessarily going to be the best environment. I think he's a good play. He does hit the ball really hard. Wyatt Langford is the cheapest, and I think Texas is kind of a brilliant way to stack it up. And was a down year last year and has potential for kind of a bounce back. So I kind of like, if of the three of them, I like Wyatt Langford just because of, I think, the points you said. But I don't know. I think it is interesting that there is some level of like growth built into this price that every player we've talked about before, the projection, we are pretty confident in.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
You don't want to be drafting someone at their peak value. You want to get someone who can overpay where you drafted them. That's a simple way to think of it. Now, I get we're still in rounds 1 and 2, but still.
Yeah. Looking at my numbers after you mentioned, I think I want to get them up just because for fun reasons too.
Yeah,
So
they
I
are
will
fun.
I will probably be doing a little bit of that as we go forward to try to get up to that, with the field range on these guys. But just naturally, without thinking about it, I have been pretty low on them. All right, so it only took us 50 minutes for one slide. So let's move on to slide 2. We were talking about maybe getting through some extra slides tonight, but we had a lot to say. I mean, outfield is arguably the most important position, and figuring
Yep.
what to do on Underdog for outfielder is really important. So
And it can determine your whole draft. Really, your whole season can be boiled down to how you drafted your outfield, and then how affected the rest of your draft.
yes, exactly. So a guy who I guess 2 years ago was about to lose his spot on the Braves roster. Suddenly is turned it on. We're at ADP 25, round 3. Braves stacks. We've talked about already being a target. Billy Marcell Ozuna, as he gets, he's not getting younger as most people aren't, but we're sitting here, still not that far away from him, just being complete trash. I mean, and as a person, but that we won't need to get into that. But Billy Marcell Ozuna, does he have another year of just like monster home runs in him again? Do you think?
It's definitely in play. It's like it's back to back 40 home run season, so 40 and 39. And still crushing the baseball. Baseball Savant is just a ton of red. Still high bat speed. He's someone who I've always struggled with because I don't understand his swing. Like it is really aesthetically ugly to me. And so like I could see, I was always when he was not good, I was like that makes sense. And now that he's hitting the ball really hard, I'm like it doesn't make sense. So I think part of my eye test says one thing, but the numbers say another. So I think he's a fine pick. I think that the age it's coming at some point. So there are other guys that I'm targeting in this range other than him, but I could see how the profile fits what we're trying to do here really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you just taken Matt Olson in round 2, and then you're going to stack him with Ozuna. I have a lot of that right there with Olson, Ozuna, especially Soto, Olson, Ozuna. That's a really fun NL East stack right there. Do either of you guys remember whenever Ozuna was on the Cardinals and that horrible play of him trying to catch the ball in left field where he scaled the wall, but then the ball was short and he had to kind of fall down to get it?
No,
I
I
always
don't
think
remember
of
that.
that. Oh, you need to see it. You need to look it up. It's
Well,
hilarious. It's so funny.
yeah.
But Ozuna, he's an enigma. He doesn't make any sense ever. He's never made sense. And so these last 2 years were after 2 terrible years, which came after 2020, where he was essentially the MVP of the short 2020 season. For all intents and purposes, he was one of the best players then. And then that's coming off of a terrible run with the Cardinals. Well, I guess he was fine with them, but not great. So who knows with Ozuna? You're right. The age cliff's coming.
All right. Brent Rooker was another guy that you needed last year. And Spencer, first of all, which athletics uniform did you pull out today? And then secondly, Brent Rooker, is he worth it? The late breakout, is it real? is there an age cliff coming quickly for him? And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, first off, Barry Zito.
Okay.
So,
Ooh,
yeah,
that's a
Barry
nice
Zito.
pull.
I was a big fan of the big three of Zito, Mulder, and Hudson, of course, and then Mulder going on to the Cardinals. But nonetheless, so Brent Rooker. Um, I wish that a year ago at this time, I would have bought more into him because all the indicators after 23 were that he was poised for breakout. But that's after basically being a nothing prospect with the Twins that never got any true work or time. So I didn't believe, I wish I would have believed more because he was such an amazing value last year. I ended up getting a little of him, but not near enough. Let me tell you that. This year, this is where I was just mentioning. Are you drafting someone at their peak value? This feels like it right here at the 2-3 swing for Brent Rooker. But with that said, yeah, I'm drafting him.
Okay.
So I'm at 13% Brent Rooker. I do really like to try to get A's stacks. I feel it's a sneaky stack that I'm really into their offense this year. In that minor league park in Sacramento where it's going to be hot and the ball could be flying in the summer. And I think Brent Rooker is locked and loaded. And guess what? So do the A's because they just signed him and gave him a 5-year contract for 60 million. So he's going to be there for a while. He's going to be their middle of the order number 3 cleanup hitter. I mean, he's the stud of their team. And if anyone hasn't heard, I highly suggest to go back a year ago to this time. Brent Rooker did a interview with Pitching Ninja, and it was awesome. It was awesome. It made me so when I started drafting Brent Rooker last year was after I watched that video of him. Like it turned me on to him because he's super smart. He's this baseball dude. Sometimes when you hear guys talk and you're like, that's a ball player right there. Like that's Brent Rooker. So I'm very in on taking him. He's a masher. Let's go.
And
Yeah.
if you're not following him on Twitter, do so right now. He's hilarious, engaging, really sharp, as you said. So yeah, great follow.
Yeah. I've got 30% Brent Rooker, so I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, 30% you're in, baby. Let's go.
I'm in. Yeah, I think when it comes to intangibles too, that personality, like he in the situation that the Athletics are in, it's very easily to just be that team to be an amorphous blob of players trying to just get through the season to get paid and play. Obviously, they love playing baseball too, but he seems like he's stepped up into a leadership role too there, and wants to be there too.
Yep.
All right, so a guy who had basically one terrible season in he wasn't even that terrible, but in Seattle, Teoscar Hernandez, Billy, back with the Dodgers. We're paying a premium here at 28 ADP. Um, what do you think? Obviously it's a good landing spot, the best landing spot he could have had. But do we see a potential for negative in terms of just because he does have this strikeout profile that is high? Where are you at on the variability of who Teoscar Hernandez could be, even if he's on the Dodgers?
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's like a fine pick here. But he's also not a guy that I'm going to see that's going. I'd be shocked if he broke the tournament, like at least like the regular season format. I could see any of the Dodgers just kind of going nuts in the playoffs and being a problem. But I don't see Teoscar Hernandez being like the third round pick you had to have to make this all work. But in a Dodgers stack, I love it. After ADP, I kind of love it too. But it's not a target for me. He's 32 years old. Probably seen his best days. So I just don't see any like super ceiling from him. But just like a solid guy in the third round.
It's a team play. Yeah, for me,
Yeah.
it's a Dodgers play. That's why you take him, just for that reason.
It is interesting though, if that is the case, because he gets there on home runs. Um, how many teams is he going to be stacked on? Right. As we're talking about, oh yeah, we know stacks are good, but we also know that certain players are together a lot. So to me, he's kind of an interesting guy here also, as a weak, a playoff breaker outside of a Dodger stack too. Um,
Yeah.
all right.
He was going round 4 pretty consistently. Round 4, sometimes late round 4, when he was a free agent in the way too early drafts. So if I went back, I bet I got him in round 5 in some of those way too early ones. When people didn't know where he was going to go, that really shows that you go to the Dodgers, all of a sudden now you're a 2-3 turn guy in a lot of drafts. That live stream we did, Matthew, he was taken at like. The third or fourth to last pick of the second round. So, you know, that's a Dodgers thing.
Yep. Exactly. Um, so now we have a guy changing teams, who didn't sign back with his old team. Anthony Santander, ADP of about 32. The general talk on Santander last year, Spencer, is that he got lucky with the home runs. What does going to the Blue Jays do to his value? And do you really think this is a peak that we're buying with Santander?
I do think it is a peak that we're buying. I do want to say that he's coming off of a 44 home run season. I would put less than a 1% chance that he hits to 44 again. Most likely, he's going to be like a 30 to 35, which I think is a totally respectable number, and that's what you should expect because he does have a lot of power. The fact he's a switch hitter too, you don't have to worry about him being platooned or anything. Obviously, we're not to that part of the draft room yet where that's really a concern. But Santander, he is though the guy that is the support for Vladimir. Now, to me, I think it's pretty clear he's the second best player on the Blue Jays now. Definitely to own an underdog, that's for sure. So I think that if I take him, I pretty much take him if I'm wanting to pair him with Vlad, who I've taken in round 2. And I do take a lot of Vlad. So it's kind of, I'm not going to say he's a stack only for me, but he's a 10 percenter. So a lot of guys, I'm a 10 percenter where I want to have shares of them. And I'm saying 10% based off of 100 drafts. If you're doing 10 drafts, then you could be, less than that. You could be 0%. You could fade a guy like this in round 3, because there are either bigger upside plays, in my opinion, or just more solidity from a proven better player option. So that's my opinion.
Okay. We get another young guy here at ADP of 33, James Wood. Um, we want to, like the Nationals this year. We start to think of that young Orioles team from a few years ago, and we think about them overplaying their projections as they kind of hit all at once. The Nationals are kind of in that point of the rebuild where they need these young guys, the 22, 23-year-old guys, James Wood included. He's kind of the top end there with the power and speed potential. Uh, I guess I don't know where I'm going with this, but Billy James Wood hasn't, as you look at the projections here, has a little bit down on the volume compared to some of these guys. And you look at the home run potential is even down compared to some of these other guys that don't hit a lot of home runs. So, James Wood, is it just a pure upside play here that you have to pay for?
So James Wood is 22 years old with 330 plate appearances in the major leagues. I think part of knowing what the projection system we're using is, I think, something we're looking at here. I think the bad X is historically known for younger players being, I guess, a little bit more skeptical of who they are. I think also with this, that you're kind of buying into a player who is ascending. He's 6'7", 230. Like you can see how this breaks right for him, and because he can hit the ball really hard. So I get it. This kind of feels where, I mean, this being a third round profile feels really expensive for me, and that's why I this portion of the draft is why I'm more inclined to draft to just double up the first and second round outfielders, just because I think this is starting to get like really expensive for guys that may or may not be impactful. There's more uncertainty with who they are compared to the infielders you're drafting here, and he's one of them for me. So um, I can see it. It's also interesting about his baseball savant spray chart is his home runs aren't necessarily pull home runs. So I don't know. Yeah, not been a target of mine.
Okay. Yeah, it's someone that I'm with the field on currently. I have like 9%. James Wood. Um, yeah, I think that he's similar to those other early guys, the young guys. And if you want to get him, you got to pay the price. So not so young, Ian Happ, kind of the unofficial leader of the Cubs for a few years now, Spencer. He's a guy that was one of my favorite picks last year, and I barely have gotten to any as he's gotten up to this mid high, mid of the high round of the outfielders.
Yeah, I wanted to make one quick comment on James Wood. Like I was saying earlier, some teams, especially bad teams, you have to kind of plan a stack ahead sometimes. If you want to get a national stack, if you want to get James Wood, you got to plan it for that round three, knowing that you can then do that with whoever you want to later, Dylan Cruz, CJ Abrams, etc. So anyway, I wanted to throw that in, and I'm at 8% every time that I click his name, though. I always think of the Peter Griffin, James Wood song in my head. So if no one if you guys don't know that, just YouTube it. I'm not going to sing it. So, um, all right, to Ian Happ. Uh, I'm pretty much a no on him at this price. So 5% is my drafted. I've put a sprinkling of him here and there because he's a good hitter. Yeah, he's a good hitter. I'm not. He's a much better real life ball player than I think he is a fantasy. And this is the highest price tag that you will find on Ian Happ anywhere across the board. I don't really understand myself why Ian Happ is more valuable here on Underdog to people than say a Suzuki, who I would rather wait from the same team and get another round or two later. Um, I don't get it. Could either you guys try to help? Like, why is Ian Happ this high? I'm not, like I said, I'm not really, even though I think he's a really good hitter, sure. He's not a big power guy. You're looking at a 20, 25 homer guy. Not a big steal guy. He's not a big average guy. He's just a solid guy across the board that's consistent at bats. I guess that's what you're buying is the consistency in the at bats. But in this price range, I don't want consistency here at this part of the draft. I want impact and guys that can really. I mean, I would take James Wood over Ian Happ if I'm looking at those names every single time. So anyway,
I think Ian Happ. So the ADP thing is interesting. So one is just scarcity for sure. Two, if he sits right at the turn. So if you had doubled up infield or you're gone or infield, feel like you're light at outfield, okay, I'll fill it. Also, if you wanted to do the Cubs sack, you could make the
this
argument to pull
starts
it
it.
into
Mhm.
start it early in round three, which is going to inflate the ADP, or you can try to let it come back to you in round four, but you're playing chicken at that point with the people that are light at outfield. So it's like I get how it sticks in there. I completely agree with you that it's overpriced for what ceiling doesn't seem to be there. But I get how it's just stuck.
Yeah, I mean, almost identical looking across this line in projection is Brian Reynolds next on, Billy. He's on an even worse team than the Cubs. I mean, I think the Cubs offense is going to be good this year. I didn't mean it like that, as much as I hate it when the Cubs are good. But Brian Reynolds, year after year, 1,300 points. I think you made a good point there, Billy. A lot of the times these two guys are being taken because they feel comfortable. So Brian Reynolds, is he in the same category as Ian Happ for you? Is not really getting to him?
Oh yeah, Spider-Man meme, like for sure. And the Brian Reynolds, I don't hate it as much just because I like the idea of O'Neal Cruz coming back to me and just being like, okay, that's a nice little mini, and I'm done with that stack on my way to my mission to stack up the whole team. But
True.
it's like maybe this is like expensive Quan, is maybe a way to think of it, but he's got a little bit better than that. But like, he does get
It's
for
quite a
20
bit
something
better.
home
It's a
runs.
lot better power than Quan. It's not a
Yeah.
little. It's a lot better.
I know Nez isn't
Yeah.
here, but I'm gonna stand up for him there. Yeah, that was a poor power comparison.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say from a power perspective, but like
In oatmeal.
his oatmeal, like his lack of ceiling seems like limited. Yeah.
There's
I'll
someone in
stop
this
talking
tier
before I get
who
in trouble.
I would put in the, I'm just going to say his name now, Matthew, is Brandon Nimmo, because Brandon Nimmo is this exact same thing. Ian Happ, Brandon Nimmo, Brian Reynolds. I will take Brian Reynolds out of all of those. I think he's the best one, and I completely agree with you, Billy. I want Brian Reynolds to then turn around and stack with O'Neal Cruz, and then you can just be done at Pirates. So
If they are the same three players, though, it is interesting that I do think the Mets is the best offense, and that is the cheapest version of the same three players.
mhm.
Yeah.
So Nimmo 8% for me, Nimmo 12% for me, Reynolds, and 5% Hap. So I think that pretty much says it.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Spencer Steer. I'll give this to you, Spencer. Why is
All
Spencer
right.
Steer? My question is simple. Why is Spencer Steer at ADP 42?
I think Spencer Steer is probably at this high of an ADP that most likely because if you look at his last two seasons, which I do a lot, where I click on the name and just look at the points scored for the last two seasons, Steer's numbers stand out big time. He scores a lot of points in this format. Why? Because he hits the ball a lot. He hits in a great environment. That's not going to change, by the way. He usually has been hitting towards the top or the middle of their order. He's just a consistent I mean, that's why he's lumped with these guys. He's one of these consistent good hitters, but he's from the right hand side of the plate, whereas the other three people we just said are all left-handed batters. This is the righty. He's much younger, but also for me, I am much more attracted to Spencer Steer because of every other format that I draft. Spencer Steer is a multi-position eligibility guy, so I'm always more preemptive to click his name, even though that doesn't matter in this format. But the Reds are also one of those teams that you just know that on any given year, the Reds are going to score runs. I mean, like I said, it's just a good hitting environment. They call it the Great American Small Park for a reason. I just went there with my buddy Duggar last year for the first time. We went and saw a Reds game. Reds play the Cardinals, and I saw Ellie and Steer both hit a home run in that game. So that was fun.
I think you made you made a really interesting point, not related to this, something that I'm also guilty of. So for those of you out there that are like, oh man, I wish I knew as much about these baseball players as all these guys do, and I knew all the ins and outs, but just admitted there by Spencer and now me. We still just open the box scores sometime and look at the last couple of years on the last minute when we're making decisions.
It's a number that's right there. Click, see, all right, this number looks good. Go. I mean,
So if you find yourself doing that, don't feel inadequate because everyone does
yep.
it. All right, Billy, Michael Harris, part of this Braves early stack. We have seen a wide range of things. He's basically gotten worse every year that he's played, but he is still only he's 23 too. Like when we talk about guys that are young,
Very, very young.
we forget how young he is because he's been here, a little bit longer. I guess where does he sit in terms of potential youth upside to the kind of the trajectory that we've seen and some of the missed time that we've seen, Billy?
So, I mean, I don't want to knock him for missed time, just because that's kind of largely out of his control. But I think he's an interesting profile. I think he doesn't, and when you look at it, like he's a young player that his underlying metrics are really good. Baseball Savant's something I like to always come back to. You were saying like you look at box scores. I go to Baseball Savant. Is it red or is it blue? Like,
Yep.
and,
I do that. I do that too, Billy. I do that too.
and so like his is red. Like batting average good, hits the ball hard. His xWOBA is really good, 81st percentile last year. And
He's
he's aggressive.
fast.
He's fast. He's aggressive. He tries to hit the ball hard. So he's on a great offense. So I think it's interesting. I think it's a great price, and there's a ceiling there that is untapped. So I'm targeting him this year for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's not that much missed time really. In his 3 seasons, so he only played 3 seasons, age 21, 22, and 23. Last year he did miss 8 weeks with a hamstring strain, but the year before he only missed 2 weeks and he didn't miss any weeks in 2022. So it's not like that big of a injury. Like Billy said, I wouldn't knock anything for injuries.
Okay. Yeah. So for me, I have a soft place in my heart because he profiles a lot like Christian Yelich to me. This guy that hits probably two. Like if he could switch one of those years where he starts hitting the ball hard in the air a little bit more, like kind of the MVP seasons for Yelich, I just see that in terms of the numbers across the board for him. So that's why I keep going back to there, trying to find that, that MVP, hidden MVP breakout guy.
You just said it. I didn't realize this until you pointed it out. He does have a very low launch angle. The MLB average is 12 degrees and he's a career 6.7 degree launch angle. So yeah, that's a good point.
But like in terms of, plate discipline, just like out of its world and hits the ball hard. So I just see that profile for him. Up next, we are at ADP 50 or 43. Riley Green on another young offense. Spencer, if you look at projections, I think when you look at the counting stats for him, they're kind of lower than you expect for kind of some of the shine that he has as in his profile and as coming up as a prospect. So Riley Green, I guess what do you think he is, and maybe in general that Tigers offense, how he fits into that?
I have a much different opinion than I did a year ago at this time on the
Okay.
Tigers in general, and that is that I very much am into the Tigers. Um, they really won me over last year. I very much enjoyed watching them, especially down the stretch. And Riley Green is a big part of that. He's their stud. He is the Tigers stud player. It's clear, it's hands down. And he's a great one to talk about right after Michael Harris. He's the exact same age. They've each played each of the last 3 seasons. Interestingly enough, Riley Green has spent a lot more time on the injured list over the last 3 seasons than Michael Harris has, including having a hamstring strain last year. But anyway, Riley Green is a absolute piece that you want on your team. Out of all these guys in this range, he's my highest guy, right at 12%. We're right there with Brian Reynolds. I really like him too. Also, starting off a potential later Detroit stack, there's a lot of really fun Detroit pieces you can take from both the infield and outfield. Outfield, my gosh, I mean, Parker Meadows, Kerry Carpenter, Riley Green. That right there is 3 really fun outfielders to take. You can get those other 2 much later. Matt Vierling in the very last round if you want, and he was the one hitting third for them last year at the end of the season. Probably going to this year. You got Glaber on that team now. Colt Keith. I'm really into Colt Keith. Those are 2 good infield pieces to put there with him. So very much into Riley Green, not only on his own from a point of he's the perfect young breakout player where it's just and his baseball savant is red as can be. Red as can be. So anyway, very, very into Riley Green. Great stack piece to start with.
Yeah, I find myself doing that a lot when I am behind at outfield. I like grabbing him because I know the Parker Meadows, Kerry Carpenter options are there later, and even hitting the infielders. But when I'm behind that outfield, I kind of, if I'm grabbing him here, I'm that's like firmly in my plan is to get one of those 2 guys at least to pair with him.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we can skip Brandon Nimmo. We kind of talked about him. Billy, I guess this is the you get all the Chris guys tonight. Mike Trout. I mean, do we really need to talk about Mike Trout?
Not really. So,
Not much.
we can go through this quickly. So, last year, if his home run pace, he just was awesome. Like he was, I think it was 10 home runs and 126 plate appearances. If you project that out across what maybe like some 550, he's going to get 50 home runs. Like that's uh, and then so there's not really much question there. I think that where I was with him was I didn't want to draft him early. I wanted to make sure he was healthy. I wanted to see what their plan was. Was there any comment or rhetoric about him being kind of dinged up in preseason? But now as we get closer, I'm going to be more interested. So yeah, especially I can draft him in many different ways, whether he's my anchor and I'm drafting and like he's going to play the whole season, or if I'm just getting like a really awesome outfielder 3 that's able to produce like an outfielder 1 for a large chunk of the season. Like, I don't know. I think that the closer we get to opening day and he's still healthy, the more of a target that he becomes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's one of the best players of all time. Everyone knows this. He'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he's not had over 119 games in his most in the last 5 years. He just can't stay on the field. Everyone knows this. But moving to right field, hey, fingers crossed. Let's hope it helps.
Yeah, that's not too much of a change in the scheme of things. I was when they were talking about that, the day before, they're like, "Oh, Mike Trout had his meeting about where he's going to play this year," and then it was like, "Oh yeah, he's moving to right." Like, okay,
Yep.
yeah, well, I don't know why they made a big. Well, at this point in spring training, they're making a big deal about everything. So
Yeah, and I'm just like, is it going to really matter? Is moving to right going to really keep him healthy? I mean, I hope so. I want it to. I
oh
root
yeah,
for him to be healthy. I think you need to own some shares of him, but to me, he's clearly a 5% share guy where it's just the chance for injury is just so high that anyway.
yeah. I think there's two was it there's 2 types of or no, there's 2 genders, people who draft 5% Mike Trout and people who draft 35% Mike Trout.
I like that. I like that. Like
um,
yeah, there's 2 types of people that like Neil Diamond or don't. That's a line from What About Bob? So
all right, Adolis Garcia, the last one on slide number 2 here. The last guy in round 4, ADP 47, was last year. I guess Spencer, the question for you is simple here. Was last year hit the way down year for Adelise due to age or injury?
I am going to say it was just due to, well, neither. My
Okay.
answer is neither. Just underproduction. He wasn't hurt in the sense of he didn't miss any time.
Right.
Any injuries that he had, he played through. It was just a bad year for Texas altogether, across the board. Other people were hurt. He wasn't, but other people were. And his production just completely fell off. Like he got so cold. Weeks 10 through 25 are bad. His beginning of the season was really good. He was still outfield 8 at the end of the first third of the season. So I think Adolis is just a really good player who's poised for a bounce back because the Rangers are poised for a bounce back season as a team. It was coming off of the World Series, what do they call it? The World Series hangover. So I'm going to be back in by betting on him, but not from a super high perspective. Where I'm at 8%. So I mean, I'm in. I'll take him. I just drafted him in the Bubba and the Bloom auction last night. I got him as my outfield 4 for like it wasn't a lot. It was like $7 or $8. It was a pretty good price when I needed some power there. So I'm in an underdog. Let's do it.
So I just put in, curious to see what my exposure is. I just typed in Garcia, and I have 1 share of Mikhail Garcia and 0 shares of Adolis. So
I get it. I get just fading him, but I like the Tex. I take a lot of Texas builds because again, Texas, like you said, Billy, they're a good team to stack. Again, I think that they're as a team, they're going to bounce back this year and give us a lot of good fantasy numbers. So I want pieces of them, and I'm going to mix Adelise into there.
Yeah, for sure. It's a baseball savant page. It's like kind of scary. A lot of like regression. Bat speed doesn't seem to be so high, but I don't know. We'll see.
If you click on the previous 2 seasons, though, it looks pretty good. There's a lot of red, and he's only going to be 32 years old. He's not old. I mean, 32 is not old. Now, granted, it's older, but it's not 34, 35, at least in my mind. I don't think he's to the cliff yet. Like, I think we're still good. Another year, 2.
Yeah. The more shows and things I do, I feel like, and smart people I talk to, I probably need to re-examine my Texas this year because I have not been getting there, and everybody else is. So, all right, next slide. We are going to get through one more slide here on this marathon. All right. You got the athletics hat on, Billy. So I'll give Lawrence Butler to you. That is an athletics hat, right?
It is. It's like a very interesting athletics hat.
Yeah.
Is that the? I can't tell. Is that the elephant one?
Yeah.
It is the elephant.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
one of the coolest logos, but we can't waste time.
Larry Butler, go.
We're beyond wasting time at this point. So what's a little more? Let's look at some hats. No. All right. Lawrence Butler, surprise, undrafted guy last year. A partial season of excellence. He put up, I think, the highest scoring week in underdog scoring last year, or top 10 he had it at least. Billy, Lawrence Butler, are you buying in on the small sample size?
I mean, I think so. We've talked through several different like very interesting young players so far, and they all kind of have the same thing: smaller sample size. Do you believe it or not? And he's just the same thing, and has his small sample size was really good. So really interesting to me as a target, stacks and also standalone, improved ballpark from last year. So just kind of does what we want him to do and hits home runs and so on. So definitely a target for me.
Yeah. Same for me. If I had that 30% Brent Rooker, so I'm getting to a lot of Lawrence, not as much, but getting to him with Rooker.
Mhm.
I think you can even still start an athletic stack with Butler. Spencer, Randy, you're getting the Seattle Mariners players tonight. Randy Rosarena kind of went there and disappeared last year. Can he climb out of the Mariners' offense production hole this year or not?
Short answer, I'm going to say no. Um, Randy Rosarena, yeah, he was once he went to the Mariners, he had 4 steals with the Mariners. All 4 of them were in 1 week. The rest of the time, no steals with the Mariners. I just wanted to point that out because part of his big value is being a 2020 guy, and if he's not going to be stealing as much with Seattle, if he's a 2010 guy. So I'm not that big in on him. I'm 4% share guy. I'll mix them in occasionally, but someone who I'd rather have in Roto, not so much here on Underdog.
Okay.
And I wanted to say this about Lawrence Butler's big week. I just wanted to look. Yeah, it was a lot, but here's the biggest week of last season. Shohei Ohtani in week 26. He hit 500 with 6 homers, 17 RBIs, and 7 steals. That's in 1 week. 500, 6 homers, 17 RBIs, and 7 steals. Absolutely insane. Absolutely nuts. Anyway, that was the highest scoring week
Okay.
last year with Shohei. But Lawrence Butler close.
All right. Billy, we got Seiya Suzuki up next. Spencer already mentioned him as preferring him to Hap, especially at price. I feel like he's been a guy that the bat has liked more than the field in previous years. Are you getting to him here at ADP about 55?
I am. I think that this is a great price for someone who like could backfill if you were light in outfield, or kind of make you feel really solid if you kind of invested early at outfield. So um, I I've been liking Seiya Suzuki. Hits the ball hard, really patient at the plate, doesn't chase. So I think that he's an interesting target, and where it starts to get a little sketchy.
Just at the position, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We saw as this comes out, we saw the first pictures of Cody Bellinger in his uniform, looking high as usual. Spencer,
He looks so stoned.
He probably was. I mean, he's from California, I mean.
but he goes to Yankee Stadium, a place that we always talk about. Lefty power playing well in has not been, what he was early on in his career. Spencer, is the park upgrade enough to get you to buy Cody Bellinger at 55 compared to when he was on the Cubs?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, quickly. Yeah. So Bellinger, well, he can't live up to his beginning of his career. When you start your career off winning MVP at 23 years old, I mean, there's only one place to go, and that's down. So Cody Bellinger, though, yeah, it's the perfect landing spot. So, to me, I'm in. I'm not sold, but I'm in. I'll take the gamble. It's a great lineup. He's going to be hitting around so many other amazing players. The Yankees may have top 3 best lineup in baseball. So I'm in on Bellinger, but he's not like a target where I'm like, oh, I've got to grab Cody Bellinger. It's just, okay, I feel like I'll grab Bellinger. I'm at a 9% Bellinger. The next guy up, though, I'm at 14%. So the next guy, Brenton Doyle, is actually who I like a lot. So yes, so Billy, why don't you jump in and talk about him, and then I'll chime in, give my thoughts once you talk about him.
Well, I just am holistically. I love the Rockies and what they can do for me this year. So if the Rockies do well, then I'll be having a good season. But I just think that Brenton Doyle is an interesting player who came from Division II and has made his way to the major leagues pretty quickly, and had a major strikeout problem and has improved that, and also can absolutely fly and plays gold glove level defense. So he's not going to come out of the game. So just someone with massive volume. His blurb is that he's going to hit leadoff, in a great hitting park. So I think that where there's like some questions in this range, I think that Doyle is someone that is interesting to me to start to open up some Rockies stacks, which there's some great ways to kind of, if you do want to get another outfielder, if you want some infielders too. So been a player that I really like drafting.
Yep. I completely agree. I'm right there with you. All those reasons. I'm all about Brenton Doyle. I'm just sold. Last year, I wasn't. After his rookie year, I wasn't sold. Again, last year you could get him at the end, round 1920 in this if you
He
wanted
was
him.
barely drafted too.
He
Yeah.
was
Mm-hmm.
barely drafted. He was on my buddy's team that finished third, and he got him right at the very end. He's a big reason why. Anyway, I just think everything you said, all the indicators are Brenton Doyle. You want to own him, at least to me.
Yeah. I think, as we keep going back and forth about the Rockies, it's just, for me this year, I don't want bad teams. So I know they play in Coors. And it's probably dumb, but I'm just not in on the Rockies this year. Like, just as a whole, that offense just seems bad. And
But you can take Doyle unstacked. You don't have to stack him with anyone. That's the
this is
thing.
true.
If you want to, you can. But Doyle, you can take by himself and be like, "There's my one Rocky." I think that's an easy thing to do to still get you some Doyle shares move up.
That's fair. The problem with that logic is that sitting right next to him is Christian Yelich. So
There we go.
for
There it is.
that might
Which
be
you are completely unbiased about.
yes, completely unbiased about Christian Yelich. So if you don't know, Christian Yelich had off-season back surgery. It's been on and again, off again back issues the last few years. It's a scary idea of getting a guy coming off back surgery. I get it, but I am biased. Christian Yelich is probably my favorite player on my favorite team, so I can get him. I'm grabbing him, all the way up to that Lawrence Butler area because right now we're at ADP 62. I'm moving him up 10 spots. He's swinging the bat. He should be, like, there was some question if he's going to be ready for opening day. And as far as he's concerned, he's going to be ready for opening day. Obviously, we need to get him in game and swinging the bat and, running at full speed and all that kind of stuff. But I think in terms of potential value, you look at that. We have two guys here kind of coming up, or another guy with a blue per plate appearance number. And yeah, just in Christian Yelich as usual. So I said my spiel. Everybody knows that. But anybody would like to take the opposite side of that and at least be a little unbiased?
Not me, Billy. What about you? I'm 13.2%, so I'm right below Brenton Doyle. Like I'm right in there on Yelich too. So what do you think?
I don't know. I just skeptical about him, but I don't know.
You can say it. I'm not going to be angry.
Are you afraid?
No, no. I just an older outfielder. My back seems like a problem. Like as I age, like I know that like having a bad back is like problematic. And so I don't know. It's just really skeptical with him. Yeah, that's just kind of that's my take.
When you
And
do
like
look at it,
was already hurt. Like
yeah.
I don't know.
I wanted to say this. I think this time of the year though is the time of year where you've heard other people say, is it news or noise, right? So with everything coming out every single day from spring training and stuff you see on Twitter, I do think it's important to know like what you can actually take as actionable information towards your drafting and what not to. Um, but you have to pivot one way. Your thought process can go one way or another. Like with Christian Yelich, I was really worried after a few weeks ago, whenever one of the coaches was talking about not knowing if he'll be ready, and I kind of went down and I kind of stopped taking him. That helped raise my Doyle shares up. But just yesterday, Christian Yelich is out there, and I'm seeing videos of him on Twitter hitting in the cage, and he's saying he's ready to go for opening day. So I'm ready to pivot right back in on him. Speaking of the Brewers, Matthew had talked about how uh, out I've been on Brandon Woodruff. Well, hey, you know what? I'm willing to change. Good news on Brandon Woodruff. He's there opening day. I'll start throwing some Woodruff shares in. I already have in the last week since we've talked. I got me some Brandon Woodruff shares.
Yeah, and it's a lot scarier or a lot less scarier doing it here on a $10 draft than if you're planning a big
That's
150
that's a
NFBC team.
key. You can be more to me. You can draft riskier here and there on Underdog. There's a little bit more freedom to do that.
Yeah. So I forget who we're at. I've got Christian Yelich on the brain.
Nick
No,
Castellanos.
I mean, yeah. Who wants to take Nick Castellanos? First of all, anybody have anything positive to say about Nick Castellanos?
Not much personally. He's just solid. I'm like he's just a solid hitter. He's fine, but not anything spectacular.
Yeah, oatmeal, right? We've
Yep.
used that term previously.
Okay.
Yeah, good team. He's on a good team. He's a Philly stack guy.
Yeah,
Getting a little bit older.
I do think he's going to be on a lot of teams stacked, and he's not going to be unstacked very often, or relative to other players. I mean, the joke is obviously with the current situation in world politics. There's a lot of opportunities for bad news to come out and have him have a good game. So he's got that track record. A guy whose track record we don't know what, does he care to play baseball? Is he actually injured? Luis Robert Jr., ADP 67. The other guy here with the blue per plate appearance number, Spencer, I don't know. What is reasonable? What is the best case scenario? What is worst case scenario for him?
Talent standpoint, a best case scenario standpoint, he's up there with those names we said at the end of the second round, right? Churio, Wyatt Langford, those guys. Like he's that level. And we thought of him a couple of years ago, just like we thought of those guys now. So, you know, Luis Robert, it boils down to this. The White Sox are terrible. They're going to be terrible again. And you don't want any White Sox pieces other than I guess you could throw in maybe Andrew Vaughn at the end or Andrew Benintendi. But you don't want to stack him. So it's just a matter of do you want to shoot for the upside with Luis Robert that either A, he stays healthy and is the leader and plays every day for a bad White Sox team, or B, this is the best case scenario that everyone wants to happen, and that's that he gets traded to a good team where he will just immediately, theoretically, go right back into being this top of the line, top of the order stud that we saw and thought of him in fantasy just 2 years ago, because power, speed, he's got it all. He does everything. He has all the tools. So he's just in a horrible situation. And yeah, I think he does want to play baseball? Yeah, but maybe not for the team he's on, and that's probably not a good thing. So yeah, I would just say I will take gambles on him. He's a 10%er for me because he's good enough that I want to have some shots, but not enough that I'm would ever be like, oh, I have to get Robert on this team. There's never once where I'm like, oh, Robert needs to get to this next pick. It's always like, oh, he's fell. Okay, I'll click his name. He's the best option here. That type of thing.
Yeah, he is a guy that you grab falling a lot because there is so much negative connotation to him that he does have the tendency to fall sometimes. Right next to him at 68, Colton Cowser. Billy, almost the rookie of the year last year in the AL. What can we expect for him? As we're talking about these sophomore guys, this is, the cheapest one that we've talked about. What do we expect out of him?
Let's see if I can be short with this. He's a really good hitter, but will he platoon? I think that's a way to kind of summarize it. How much volume is he going to get? Is that offense is very crowded, and is he going to get just full run, or is he going to get some partial run? You look at Fangraphs, I think they project him for something like 76% of playing time, and that's left field and right field. So, like, if he can get that upwards closer to 90, then we're talking about a potential smash here. If he's kind of just stymied a little bit, then you're going to be a little kind of frustrated. But he's a great player, great prospect. Only is he 24 years old currently, so definitely ascending, but just a crowded offense.
Yeah, and he's projected. I was just looking where he's projected in the order. They've got him set up on roster resource as batting fifth. They don't have him as a platoon bat. They kind of have some other platoons there with Ryan O'Hearn, Cedric Mullins. So he escapes that fate. But yeah, it's very much a question mark where he fits in exactly. But just a good hitter in general.
Yeah. Really talented.
Right. Jerkson Profar, Spencer, you're back. You're good to go.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. I have do not disturb on, but I had a call come through, and I guess a buddy must have called me multiple times for it to come through. Anyway.
Okay, no problem. If people have made it to an hour and 47 through here, they're not going to mind a little phone call interruption at this point.
Well, I appreciate it. Can I double up on this one real quick? Can I talk about Profar and Cruz real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Profar, I am in, especially for Brave stacks, especially after that signing for 3 years, because Profar is one of the biggest prospects that we've had that just did nothing for almost a decade. And then last year, it's like, oh yeah, remember that I was once known as one of the best potential players in baseball? Remember me, guys? Hi. But him signing with the Braves, that's a positive. I'm in because of that, the landing spot, but not at a ton. He's like right there with that Robert 10% guy. Here's one of my biggest drafted people this year, though, Dylan Cruz.
Okay.
I am major in on just taking that swing on Dylan Cruz being a stud and working out, because the way I see it is his upside, with his speed and hit tool is right there with James Wood. Not the power. Obviously, James Wood has the power. That's the big difference there. But Dylan Cruz does have power. He currently is sitting as the fourth prospect, I'm pretty sure, on MLB.com overall. And I'm just buying in. I'm saying I want to own Dylan Cruz. If he ends up not having a big rookie year, then it is what it is. But I'm all about jumping on him, and any time that I'm doing any form of national stack, Dylan Cruz is going to be a part of that. So I'm 16.5%. That's one of my highest percent. So I'm just buying in.
Okay. I coming into this year, I did not know too much about Dylan Cruz, and someone sold him to me as a Yelich profile too, so they knew how to get me in on a guy. So I do grab some Dylan Cruz here and there, and we are getting to we're still in, or this is the start of round 7, and he's ADP 76, but we're starting to get to the point in the outfield where you have a question about every guy that we're going to talk about. So, if you want this exciting prospect with a potential high upside, paying here feels kind of bad, but like you said, you're just buying in.
Yep. And that's it. You either look at like Profar, you want the boring veteran who maybe might do something, or do you want the rookie who could be exciting and has a up arrow pointing this way? I'll take the rookie with the up arrow. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And at this point in the draft, obviously, different points in the draft, you'll think differently. But right here, this is the sweet spot, round 5 to 7 at Outfielders.
Yeah. So, Billy, Stephen Kwan has become, he's kind of a
It's a punching
underdog.
bag.
He's an underdog scoring meme because he, up until last year where he found some pull side power, it did not do what we want for underdog scoring.
Yeah, he had an opportunity to do the funniest thing last year. So previously, he was the punching bag of everyone, saying, "Okay, he's the definition of an accumulator, a compiler that's going to look much better when from a totals perspective, but when you break it down to how much he contributes for best ball, it's going to be not. It's completely underwhelming." And last year he started on a complete heater. Before a pre All Star break, he was hitting 352, and then post All Star hitting 206. So uh, I think that probably he's more like the guy we saw beforehand, single digit home runs, and if that's the case, he's going to be very unuseful. A guy that you will never see me draft on principle, and and I could see some level of utility. You can talk me into it, maybe, but I will not be doing that because I will not be drafting in a way that forces me into drafting Stephen Kwan. So I will find other ways to make it work. But yeah, I think you saw his peak season last year, and it was still pretty meh for underdog.
Yeah. All right.
Completely agree.
Okay. Yeah, because it comes down to, for me, I've talked about it a few times. These guys that depend on pulled power to get to their power numbers. Uh, I want to see it multiple times, multiple seasons. I don't personally know if that is like how repeatable that is, and I don't think we see enough players that really, you know, I think we're still entering the age of where people are going to start really pulling more into the extremes and trying to find that extra power there. So I just don't know how repeatable it is. So your version of, or my version of your Dylan Cruz, Spencer, is Jason Dominguez. He's got a really short UD total here, under 1,000. And the plate appearances at 522. I was concerned to start the year, like we saw in the playoffs last year, them just playing Alex Verdugo for the defense over him potentially. This year they haven't brought anybody in, and now we've got news that Giancarlo Stanton hit both of his elbows hurt, fairly bad. Not just like, oh, I got sore elbow to start the season. Like he's been managing it from the playoffs, and still, it's pretty bad. So I've seen the signal from the Yankees up to this point that they are ready to play him, and I just want to be in early on this power speed combo potential.
Yep. So it's funny you say that Dominguez is your version of my Dylan Cruz. Dominguez is actually my own version of Dylan Cruz too. He's my number one. I've been waiting out of all of these top 7. Dominguez is 24.8%. That's by far, because 16 of Cruz was my highest percent wise out of all of these top outfielders we've said. Dominguez, I buy in on time after time after time. He's playing. This is his year. He's an absolute. Every indicator is that he's an absolute beast. He homered in his first at bat. I mean, as long as he stays healthy. I do have some fear of the injury that's been kind of lingering the last few years, but buy in on Dominguez. Get in. I completely agree.
Yeah. All right. We've done it. We've made it through 7 rounds of outfielders, under 2 hours. We had talked about going on to the next one. We will not. We will be getting to that later this week. So we did it. I guess just in general, now that we've gotten through kind of the like I kind of mentioned, that we start to have questions from here on out on outfielders. Billy, in general, do you feel, going through this list that the outfield push up has gotten too extreme? As we're talking about these guys at the end of this round or um, this episode compared to the guys we were talking about at the end of the 10th, in the 10th round at the end of the first infield episode, like, has it gone too far?
Maybe, but I still think there's like if you look through the outfielders, there's still values to be had kind of through most points of the early rounds. I think that some of like the raw compilers are overvalued and that I'm not getting to them. But yeah, I think what's interesting, and we're going to go through it in this next segment, is how barren the next phase of the draft is at outfield. So, um, I don't know. Like I struggle with it being overvalued because like there's a pull, it's a push pull, right? Like outfield has gone up, so pitching has gone drastically down. So it's like you get into like it's I don't, feels fair. Like last year felt like it's still a little glitchy. Like you could just dominate outfield, dominate infield, and still have a fair amount of pitching value left. This year it feels much more like you're not just like if you know what you're doing, you're running away with the draft. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Spencer, you've been drafting on Underdog, a few years, like just general landscape of outfielders after talking through them. Do you have any kind of overall thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, outfield is always pushed up on underdog. This isn't new to this year. It's just now this year to more of an extreme. So that's just just how the format is. So to me, I think it's just with anything that you do, when you're joining different platforms of fantasy baseball, there are so many different rules and different scoring and different rosters. You just have to know what you're doing. And on Underdog, this is just how it goes because, like Billy said, once we hit this next group of slides of outfielders, you can still find good ones. We're going to talk about some good ones, I know, but they're few and far between. They're hard to find, and your chances of missing are much greater. It's just that simple. So you're trying to up your odds of not swinging and missing on players by spending up and getting these guys early, and then you can get the pitching and infielders late. I know I've heard you guys say in the infield show that you don't love a lot of the late round infielders. You don't aren't normally targeting infielders in round 19 and 20. I am. I'm looking at infielders almost always in round 19 and 20. Almost, not every time, but it's because I don't like the outfield options at the end, and I don't like the pitching options at the end. So I just think that it's a very fair value for outfield based off of how important they are and how limited there is for like actual movers and shakers, people that'll make an impact on a weekly basis.
All right. Excellent. If you made this, you know what? Why don't you go into your cabinet or wherever you store the cookies, and if you made it through this 2 hours, go have yourself a cookie. You've earned it. Uh, we appreciate everybody who does. If you do, leave a comment here that what kind of cookie you enjoyed at this point. I have some Girl Scout cookies that I think I might go have a Thin Mint or two to celebrate myself.
Only two? You got to eat a whole sleeve.
I was going to say, if you're going 10 minutes, a sleeve.
Yeah, 1 or 2 sleeves. Yeah, what I didn't mean cookie.
Oh, I
Yeah,
forgot the
yeah.
unit. Sorry,
I
my
didn't give
bad.
the unit.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Thank you, Billy and Spencer, for joining tonight. This will be out, and then look for the second half after on Friday. Thank you for watching, everyone, and go fill some drafts.